I felt such secondhand embarrassment when at the end Kitty was trying to explain to the servant, like, yeah, I'm totally gonna be naked in this room, like, waiting for him, so, like, we're totally gonna have sex, so, like, go away.
Yeah!
Like, so embarrassed for her.
And it was to the butler, too. He's probably like, oh, God.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Romancing the Monsters. I'm Em.
Hi, I'm S.
I'm Seth.
And this week we read My Darling Duke by Stacy Reid. It's a historical romance with a scarred hero, Beauty and the Beast-esque. Seth, what is this book about?
All right. Well, we start off with the story with a girl named Kitty or Catherine. She goes by Kitty. Who's with her friends at a ball, and they're all sick and tired of being looked over, and they're just wallflowers. And they vow to do whatever wicked thing they can do to ensure their own happiness, and so they dub themselves the sinful wallflowers. But anyways, we start off with Kitty, and she's our first sinful wallflower. And she comes up with a plan to pretend to be engaged to the recluse Duke of Thornton, who has been in London for years. And he doesn't even respond to rumors in the papers about him. So basically everyone just thinks he's MIA and just does not care. He lives in Scotland. Everyone knows he lives in Scotland, but he does not come to London. And then in Scotland, he hears of his supposed engagement to Catherine. And he orders his team of lawyers to give her a carriage and horses for transport, because he's also really intrigued by her and like everything he's been reading about in the papers and the gossip magazines and things like that. And he decides that he's going to go to London and see his own fiancée for himself. And Catherine, or Kitty, I guess, does not in a million years think that she would ever see the Duke, because, as I said, he really doesn't respond to any rumors and no one even hears anything about him. So she is literally so shocked and scared when she sees him for the first time. And then we also see him or read about him and what he looks like. And of course he's wearing a mask because he's covering his scars.
Very Phantom of the Opera-esque of him.
Yes! His mask really like screamed Phantom of the Opera.
I thought about you when I read that. I was like, Seth is gonna love this.
I was dying. Anyways, yeah, he's very scarred on his face. A lot of his skin's gone. And also he has a lot of stiffness in his body. So, like, he uses a wheelchair sometimes and a cane the other times whenever he's able to withstand the pain a bit longer. Yeah, I mean, that's the startup of their story. And he agrees to the ruse of being her fiancé for a while, in exchange for her going to Scotland with him, or coming to Scotland with him for a week or two. And that's basically where the story starts.
And then forced proximity.
I know!
You know, stuff like that ensues. Romance.
Witty banter.
So what did you guys think?
I really loved it, as I already said on my Twitter. I enjoyed this book so much.
As I already said on my Twitter, as if by the time this comes out, it hasn't been like months.
Yeah, I know.
The tweet is gone and forgotten. I'm sorry.
Okay, fine. Yes, I really enjoyed this book. I loved the characters. I loved the setup of their story. I think, as I said, their banter was really, really good. And, like, I actually found myself laughing sometimes. And I also found myself, like, really sad about certain things, too. Because I feel like this book was heavy, despite it having a light overtone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it.
But yeah, I enjoyed the characters.
What about you, Wes?
I loved it. I really, really loved it. Yeah. I really loved Kitty, and then I felt like I had Like, I related a lot to Alexander for obvious reasons. You girls know. And then, not to get personal, but, like, you know, him using, like, the wheelchair and the cane. I'm someone that uses a wheelchair and a cane. So, like, I kind
Mm-hmm.
of felt his pain and his frustrations. And so I related a lot, and I really loved it.
Yeah, I thought that the author did quite a good job of, and I don't want to say making it accessible, because I kind of think that authors shouldn't have to, especially, own voices, authors shouldn't have to make their story more accessible to those who've never had that as their reality, and in this case, I don't know
Yeah.
that this is, that in the case of Stacy Reid, it's an own voices story, but the argument remains that this is still there's no need to make it accessible, but there is a need to tell the story respectfully. But I did think that the way that she wrote it was quite respectful in the sense that Alexander was allowed to just be a man, like he wasn't defined by his disability, but it also was clearly a part of who he is and his life, and that wasn't like discarded as if it's all roses and sunshine, because it is like a huge part of who he is, but it's not all that he was allowed to be. He was still allowed to be super manly, still allowed to be dominant, whether he's in a wheelchair or standing on his own 2 feet. It didn't matter. And I thought that was really, really well done in the book. And she made it very easy to transpose myself in the shoes of someone who does use a wheelchair or a cane, even though that's never been my personal reality. And while she never, shies away from showing his frustrations, it also is never written in a way that tells me as the reader that I should be pitying him in that moment, but rather, it makes me feel with him, if that makes sense. Anyways, long story short, I really enjoyed the book. I really liked the characters. I really liked their dynamic.
Yeah.
I thought that the banter was really good in the book. This was my first Stacy Reid, so I didn't really know what to expect, but turns out I really like her writing. I really like her stories, at least this one. And it's like very sexy. So I will definitely be checking out some of her other books because I really, really like this one.
Yeah.
Oh, and just quickly, I have to say that when I started it, I was like, oh God, another Beauty and the Beast book for the podcast. Because we've done like 4 so far, and I was wondering how is this gonna, differentiate in any way from the other ones. But I was pleasantly surprised pretty much from the start, or I guess reassured from the start that it sounded like this was gonna go in a slightly different way, and I would say that it did. So that, ended up being a positive, not a negative.
One big difference I think I picked up on right away was Alexander's want to be part of the society. Like a want to like
he
return
wanted
to
it
normal.
and then he didn't. That was a thing that was confusing to me.
Because I think he thought like his happiness lies with the London Ton and like with the people there. But then he realized later on it wasn't. But I think what's different with him is that none of the heroes that we read before, and either the Day of the Duchess deal.
We had The Black Beast of Belleterre by Mary Jo Putney. We had the Duchess deal by Tessa, and then we had Beast of Bezek by Amalie Howard.
Yes. Those 3 books differed in the sense where they did not want to be part of London Ton or like want to like be part of the society, and like they feared the rejection and all of that stuff. But like here, while people looked at him and were like, he's kind of like, not normal looking, I guess you could say. They didn't really like fear him or shun him or anything like that. A lot of people wanted him to be part of like their parties and their galas or whatever. So that part I think was different, and like him wanting to be a part of it, but not, in the end not really caring to be part of it. I think that was a bit different.
Yeah, in this case, I definitely agree that there is a difference between staying away because society
Yeah.
tells you that they don't want to see you.
Yeah.
And that you don't belong, and making the choice of like coming back and being like, you know what, I just don't think that this is for me, and I would rather live away. And that's a choice, and that's fine. That's not something that was imposed on you.
Whereas I feel like that, being scared of people's opinions or views on you, like that was something that was hanging over us, I think, for the other books, and that was a question that we had for these characters, and like when they would decide to go into the London Ton, and that was something we didn't really like. It was explored in this book, I think.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
Okay, so I guess I have a little bit of a question. So we know the first time he goes into, he reintroduces himself to the London Ton, he goes with his wheelchair, and he also wears a mask. So my question is, why do you think he reintroduced himself the first time the way he did? Like, instead of, like, because we know he's capable of walking with a cane, or, like, I just wanted to know your thoughts on that. Why do you think he did that?
I think maybe just to kind of, I don't want to say like prepare the people, like to kind of show like this is me, like this is, I use a wheelchair, I have a mask, like this is what you're gonna, like I'm maybe showing like the worst of it, I guess, of like the situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I wonder if it's not so much for the people as it is for her. Like, I wonder if he was trying to make a point to her. Because in a way, she has been using him. She used the fact that he was away. So I wonder if he wanted to show himself that way. Because you're right. Like, he is capable, and we know by that point in the book that he can walk. So, and I think she says something when she sees him about like how something like he can't go down the stairs. Like that's what she thinks or something. Like.
Yeah.
So she goes to him, like maybe that was his intent. Like I don't know if he wanted her to come to him or wanted to see what she would do or how she would react to him. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think it's a mixture of both. I think he wanted to show Catherine the extent of everything, and also maybe to see her reaction, about that, and also to show the Ton, this is me, this is what I am, like this is my life.
Yeah, or there's also the possibility that he's actually trying to show them what they think he is, as opposed to who he knows he is.
That's true.
Because, we know that he doesn't wear the mask on the regular. So
technically,
he is putting on a bit of a show, like he is putting on a personality that isn't necessarily, or I guess a front that isn't necessarily his. So whether it's he made that move for the people there or he made it specifically for her, I do think it's kind of maybe a game for him of some sorts. I think he's kind of a complex character, and he definitely throughout the book sort of puts on a different front depending on who he's with. So I wouldn't find that surprising, I guess. Okay, so moving on from this, I wanted to talk about something that I think is kind of a somewhat big part of the story, or at least his story as a character, and that's the fact that he believes he's impotent. Because at first I got really excited because, well, first of all, it's something I've personally never read in a book, if I remember correctly. But I was really excited to read a novel with a man who is potentially impotent. I've heard it both ways. And who is allowed to be a sexual being still, and to have sexual urges, and to be very masculine and dominant anyway. And this kind of relates to what I was saying earlier about, the fact that he has a disability. Well, this is kind of explored in the same manner, where he's not diminished for it, and I was really excited for that. But I do wonder how you guys felt about how that was resolved, because I also think, like, I get the whole point of why not, make him happy and give him everything he wants. He's a fictional character. Who cares, So yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of like in the middle on that issue of like the fact that by the end he can have sex probably not as often as someone who hasn't had the injuries that he's had, but, still.
I think at the end, Catherine says that they have sex at least once or twice a week or something.
Yeah, and then he can give her a child, which was something else that he didn't think he could.
Yeah.
So how did you guys feel about that choice?
But I think it kind of played into, like, I'm just thinking about, like, what the doctors would tell him. Like, he wasn't able to walk and he wasn't able to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And they kind of gave their opinions, and that kind of, like, when someone tells you something that you can't do, it kind of, it stays with you,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that affects you with life. So I'm seeing it as where they told him, okay, so I'm seeing it as where they told him he's impotent. Impotent?
I don't know. I've heard it both ways. Like I said, impotent. I don't know. Anyways.
So they told him he's, he, for the past 10 years, he didn't have anybody to be sexual with, or, he didn't even try.
I mean, I think he did try.
He did. His cousins brought in prostitutes or whatever.
And I do think that they say at some point, and it's an interesting take on why this could be. They told him something along the lines of, like, your body was still healing.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. And it got me thinking, when your body goes through something as traumatic as what he went through, yes, your body is healing, but I was thinking your mind is also healing. Like, emotionally, you have to heal as well. And so, I was like, okay, so it kind of made sense on that front of, like, going, well, you're emotionally, you just weren't there. Like, you just weren't ready for that. And that's completely understandable because being sexual is something that involves your body. And so it makes sense that when your body goes through changes like that, it would sort of reshape how you see yourself, and how you interact with your body, or, so I was like, okay, so on that front, I can see it, and it's something that's interesting. It's the book doesn't say so. They just talk about, like, the body healing, but it got me thinking, like, yeah, your mind does heal, like, does need to heal as well.
No, and I agree with that. I feel like that was in there for you to actually realize the extent of his recovery process and, like, how absorbed he was in his, like, I think we can call it depression. He was, like, really, he was, like, bedridden, and he was taking drugs to, like, also, like, help with the pain, but also, like, self-medicate, and he got addicted to drugs as well. And I feel like all that happened in, like, the span of 10 years. And imagine, like, being, shown prostitutes or whatever, and, like, you still don't have full control of your body, or you can't really move in the way that you want to move, because he was very active. I remember he was, like, called a rake or whatever beforehand, and that was 10 years ago, and, like, now he can barely even lift a leg. And I think it's just, for him, it was more like mind over matter or something like that. I just feel like he thought he was impotent because of the 10 years that had passed, and, like, the doctors also thought, and, like, research obviously wasn't, as apparent as it was now. It's not as something, like, it's not something that's done back then as it was now. And I don't think the doctors were as aware of, like, the body and, like, the capacity that they have for certain things. And I'm not making sense right now, but what I'm trying to say is the doctors themselves, I don't think, were aware of him and like everything that was going on within him. But I don't know, I thought it resolved really well. I thought it was believable for me. Not that I've ever experienced something like that. Like, I don't know, like, these were situations that I've never experienced for myself. Obviously, as readers, we come across many situations like that. But I still felt like, as I was reading it, that it was a believable resolution.
So is the reason why you're asking is because you kind of expected a different ending for them?
It's mostly just because the beginning of the book kind of had me expecting something different that I feel we don't see that often in historical romance, but romance period, really. Because we romanticize men a lot in romance. And we sexualize them a lot. And so I was just excited by this portrayal of a man who is both impotent, and very manly men. I was scared that this book would fall into the trope of like, you know, it's kind of similar with like infertility, for example, where you have this character who is infertile and they know this, and yet by the end of the novel, by some miracle, they can suddenly have babies. And I do think that the criticism could be true in this case, and that it might apply of like the magically cured, but I also feel like the whole perspective of your mind also has to heal, and your mind has a lot to do with sexual desire and such, and if you've gone through something that completely rewired how you see your body, I think it makes it believable in that sense, because it is true. There's many reasons why someone might have trouble, you know, being sexually aroused. It doesn't necessarily have to be something medical per se. It can be something like a mental blockage of some sort, a trauma, whatever it may be. So, you know, I like to keep in mind that that's a possibility. So that's why I'm not like knocking this book for that reason, because I do think it made a point of at least showing us readers why it could be, as opposed to just being like, oh, turns out you were wrong all this time, which turns out he was wrong all this time, but also there was an intelligent, believable reason at the end of it all.
Okay.
That I think makes it all better and makes me think, okay, I can get behind this. And just to quickly add, I do think it's interesting that by himself he was never able to get aroused, but with her he could, which I think kind of adds to this whole idea of it's a mental, emotional blockage more than anything that relates to him towards himself first and foremost, and how he feels about himself, perhaps. And with her, those blockages, is that a word? Kind of fall, you know.
Because when he does finally try to, you know, jerk the meat or whatever you call it.
The what?
He just, like, that was when him and Kitty...
Self-pleasure.
There you go. When he's... yeah. Anyways, when he's trying to pleasure himself... Shut up! Him and Kitty weren't on good terms. So, yeah, I think it was an emotional thing at that point, because that was the first and only time he tried to pleasure himself. Should we talk about that? What happens to them and their fight?
Well, yeah, so the first time that they get frisky, he unfortunately gets injured again. I guess, you know, something flares up.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it's his leg or his back, potentially.
I think it was the lower back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously that puts a damper on their friskiness. At least on his part. She was, you know, she was being great. She was like, oh, this is fine. Like, we could figure this out. And he was like, I absolutely cannot get over this.
Yeah.
So he did what you know, all heroes do in these books, and it's to push her away.
Yeah.
To tell her, pack your bags, go.
And he did it in the way that really hurt. It started with them agreeing, yes, to go to Scotland together, but he also said he'll only send her back once he's no longer intrigued by her. And he said to her that I'm bored, you can go now, or something like that.
He's such an asshole sometimes.
Like that. I know! It was such an asshole move.
I'm bored. Like, jeez. Yeah. I kind of wish she had stayed and just annoyed the crap out of him. Just stay and just, you know, make your point. Say, I'm not going anywhere, you asshole.
But I like that she was like, you know what? Enough of this shit. I'm gone. Yeah. Like, I love that she was like, she had enough, I don't know what the word is. No, not dignity. I guess you could say that. Or, like, she knows her self-worth in the sense where she knew that she deserved more than, like, him hating on her, calling her like names, and like just saying that he's bored with her, like she honestly was like, no, I'm not gonna sit around and be humiliated and like hated on. I'm gone. And I love that she made that decision, because it's so unheard of, I think, in romance books. Like you said, the women usually go running back, or they go, I don't know, like they end up staying, or like try to rationalize things. Whereas Kitty knew what she deserved and she knew what she was worth, and she's like, nuh-uh.
Though I will say that I kind of expected him to go for her.
I did too.
I did
well, he
too.
was gonna go.
I did.
Well, he was gonna go, and then she came back and was like, "Girl, no, wait for him. It's his turn.
I know.
Like he's got to make the move.
He was taking his sweet ass time. Yeah.
He's got.
But
to
I
make the
still
move.
love that it was still on her terms, though.
What was up with those letters at the end? I was like, boy, bye. Like you're just being annoying. Like no one cares.
Yeah.
Okay, bring your ass, or like don't bring anything at all. Like.
But there was a purpose, right, to the letters?
Yeah, those stupid letters. Like, I love blue fat flowers. My favorite color is orange, or whatever. I was like, shut up, boy.
And I love how she was giving him the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Like, I was dying. I know I shouldn't have been laughing then, but I was laughing. Anyways, going back to her going back. How did you feel about her decisions and how she decided to meet with a Prussian princess, Prussian, however you say it? How do you say it, Marge?
Prussian?
Prussian?
Was she Prussian?
There you go. Yeah. A princess who's in exile. And apparently she knows the ways,
Yeah, of a courtesan somehow.
Yeah.
But isn't she a virgin or something?
It
like
was
that?
kind of unclear. It was
she
like, oh, she knows the ways of a courtesan, but she's a princess, so like.
And
you
she's a
would
virgin.
think that she's a virgin, but I don't know. There was something.
She said she
that.
was.
Okay, well, she did say that, but like, who are you hanging out with? Is the question. Like,
I want her book.
Yeah.
So yeah, she literally learns how to seduce her man, and then she decides to do it.
I guess I expected it to, end a little differently. Like, I expected him to go over there with, to follow her. But I can't really say, it happened. And
yeah, I feel like that's exactly it. Like, it happened. Like, it just, I really feel like it was his, he had to be the one to make the grand gesture, and he didn't. That kind of left me like, eh. It was fine, but like, I really wish it was him. Like he had gone there, put his ass in the carriage, drove his ass to London, and been like, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you.
Because he has some southern accent.
All of a sudden, yes. Alas, it did not happen that way. What did you think, Seth, then?
Okay, so for me, I liked it because, like I said earlier, it was still on her terms, and it was what she wanted, and how, it's the way she wanted to go about it. Yeah, so for him, I agree. I think he should have been the one to make the big grand gesture, but I also think we need to look at his mental state and where he was, because at that point, he literally started back at 0. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't really stand up for long, if at all. He knew that she deserved more. Well, he thought that she deserved more. And he still, despite it all, was still going to go to London to get her. And, of course, that was going to happen the day after she arrived. And, everything was already organized. Everything was ready to go because, obviously he needed to have a carriage and other things like that because he's not able to probably ride the horse as well as he did before. So I still think his grand gesture was there, in the sense where everything was ready to go, and he was the first one to express his feelings for her, and he was the first one to say things about the relationship, and he was the first to say he loved her. So it was there, and I enjoyed the way their sex happened as well, because it was still her control.
Why does that sound so weird? I love the way their sex happened.
I said it, and then I was like, shit, I didn't mean it like that.
I don't know why. I have the mind of a 12-year-old today, clearly.
No.
He jerked his
I
meat.
didn't mean it like that.
And then the sex happened.
You ruined it. Thank you.
I feel like I feel
think
like
I'm gonna
in
stop
a
talking.
way you could say that his grand gesture came afterwards when he when they traveled all over the world. Like that in a way you could tell like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not easy for him. Like you know, he doesn't have his doctors with him, which clearly have been with him for like 10 years. You know, he's going away from his house, which we all know he prefers to be at. So, like, he did do that for her. You know, they're traveling all over the place because he knew
Exactly.
it's something she wanted. So
Yeah.
you know, it just happened after, which is it's fine. I'll take it.
I just wished it happened a little before.
No, I mean, I think it happened right when it should. Like, I don't know. I thought this book was well, like, the events were well placed, I think, for me.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it happened, of course, yes, on their honeymoon, but also when they were both kind of, like, unequal grounds in terms of, like, their emotional level, if that makes sense. And for me, my question is, do you think she was fair in the sense where, knowing where he was at that point, asking him to go on, like, a world tour with her? Knowing that, like, obviously, like, we're not going to read about the pain he's in every night, like, the pain of, like, the struggle of traveling all the time and, like, always being on the move. Like, do you think that was fair? And he wouldn't have his doctors with him, as you said, Marge.
I mean, I think it
know.
is fair in the sense that he's a grown-ass man, and he was like, let's go on a vacation, babe. And he did. Like,
True,
that's his,
he knew
that's
it.
his
Yeah,
decision.
he knew.
I don't think
knows his
like
capacity.
it's fair in the sense that like he can make his own decision, and if he was like, I can do this, then he can do it. Period.
Yeah. True.
So like,
that's true.
just God damn it, man, put your ass in a carriage and drive to London. You know, instead of sending those
Oh my god,
letters that are dumb.
Yeah, I agree.
That's my gripe with this book. The letters, I mean, that was never resolved.
I mean, like, that was him trying to reach out, I think. But then, like, and I think that really mirrors, like, you know those conversations you have with random guys that are like, where is this going? This kind of felt like that.
Well, I mean, you don't want that when the relationship is, like, established.
Well, yeah, but also it kind of, like I said, they're all on, like, level 0, if that's a level. The relationship was at the beginning again, like, he was at the beginning again. Like, she was building herself back up from, like, that heartbreak.
But wasn't it because, didn't she tell, like, the papers, like, wasn't she interviewed and she's like, oh, he always writes me letters and stuff? So that was kind of his way of, like, that was the purpose of the letters?
It could be. I know she said that it was, like, that's how the relationship started, but...
Anyway, what did you guys think of the whole thing with, when there was, like, the storm and the carriage and the pond or whatever when they fell through, or...
That scene was intense.
It was.
And I was, like, imagining how cold it was, and I was dying.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it was really good in the sense where you saw, like, Alexander in his element, haha, pun intended.
He was very capable. Like, I loved how it established that, like, he has some days where, you know, that would have never been possible. But then he has days where, like, heck yeah, he can go in there and, like, he will save his friend because, you know, like, I think that's, like, really cool to see. And, like, she went in there to help him, which was great. And then it led to, like, what, 2 days? Like, one night?
No, it was one
in
night.
That cottage. Which, I have another gripe with that. I was like, bitch is, like, rummaging through things that are not hers. I was like...
Well, he said he'd put it back to order.
Well, I mean, she was, like, stealing clothes and food. And I was like, these are poor people. Like, why are you stealing their shit?
I'm pretty sure Alexander would, you know... restock
I know they
everything.
put it back, but like I was just as if it were me, if it were my house, you do not touch my shit. I don't care. Like, well, you're gonna have to ask for permission because she was like putting on that woman's nightie. Like that's personal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess I don't know. I just see it as he was probably gonna be more than generous with them in that cottage and like giving them everything else that they didn't have, and even if they did have it, he'd probably, you know, give them that too. But no, I feel like the whole storm thing was really important for Kitty to see that his servants meant more to him because George was, was it his butler or just a servant? I don't remember. Or his valet. I don't remember. Anyways, he was someone working in the house, but like over time that became Alexander's family. And I don't know, I thought it was really important to see, and like later on in the cottage when George leaves him alone because he like wants him to be alone. And he's like trekking through like the rain and the mud to like give them their time alone.
I felt such secondhand embarrassment when at the end Kitty was trying to explain to the servant, like, yeah, I'm totally gonna be naked in this room, like waiting for him. So like we're totally gonna have sex. So like go away.
Yeah.
Like so embarrassed for her.
And it was to the butler too.
Yeah.
He's probably like, oh gosh.
Like, can you make sure no one comes by? Because I want to be real loud.
We didn't talk about the forced proximity, though, in the cottage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You just talked about the food and the clothes. How did you feel about them sharing a bed?
That annoyed me, all right? But, like, yes, okay, let's talk about the forced proximity. What did you think?
It was sexy. That whole scene. I felt like it was sexy.
I loved it.
The audio, or I don't know, maybe, I don't know if you read it on ebook.
I did the audio,
I don't
too.
know if you guys read it on ebook.
Yeah.
I felt like it was like more the way she like spoke, like she whispered. I feel like she whispered.
But she whispered throughout the whole book. That really annoyed me. I was like, can
Yeah.
you like up your level a little bit? Like it was like I was like, can you act like it felt like she was embarrassed to read what she was reading. I was like, can you actually speak out loud? Like,
Yeah, I had to turn up my speed in order for me to kind of like capture everything she was saying. But it was sexy. I mean, I like the scene.
her voice worked in those scenes. Everywhere else, it
Yeah.
was a little weird, but like,
I loved it. Their forced proximity, them sharing a bed, and I thought it was just like, I just love Kitty because like she just knew what she wanted and she chased after it. She like, I love how she was the one that initiated the kiss, and like he kept goading her and like, trying to get her angry, and he's like, that was not a kiss. That was a slobber.
He was a jerk.
And then like I don't know, I just felt like their kiss was so cute.
I have a confession to make.
Yes.
I'm not a fan of forced proximity in historical romance.
Really? I love it in
No?
any genre.
I just love, well, in anything else I do, but in historical romance, I just love the rules that apply when you're around people too much. Like, I love how everything is, like, suddenly forbidden. That I'm not a fan of, like, when it's forced proximity and, like, usually there's no one else there, obviously.
Yeah.
Then, like, all those rules don't apply anymore, and it's, like, kind of like we can be as wild as we want tonight because no one will know. I'm like, oh, no, but I love how, like, I just love when they can't do everything they want and like the angst of that,
Okay.
So
That's fair.
but it was fine. Like I wasn't bored or anything, but like if you give me the choice, I would rather no forced proximity in my historical romance. That's it.
I love it in any genre on any day.
Fine.
So
That's-
question, how did you feel about her going with him to Scotland without
A
I guess,
chaperone.
Yeah, that was a
Scandalous.
bit odd for me.
That was a bit odd. Yeah, like how
And like the mom was like, okay, like you do what you gotta do. Like I felt like the mom was okay with it, right? Like go be a little hoe, it's okay.
Yeah, the mom was a little for me because that would not have happened.
well, what was the mom doing? First of all, what was the mom doing?
Well, the mom was busy with the season with the other daughters.
Well, Kitty is over there,
their
literally
chaperone.
sacrificing herself and, like, making up lies because this mother, I don't know what she's doing, but she's not doing what she should be doing. Like, she could have married
Yeah.
again, perhaps.
So
I don't know.
Well, maybe she was past the marrying age. Like, how old was their mom? So Kitty was, like, in her, like, childhood when her dad died. Like 9, I think she said. I don't remember. Anyways, but yeah, her mom could have remarried.
I mean, there's always going to be a grumpy old man somewhere who just doesn't want to take care of the estate or whatever, and he wants a wife to take care of it, period.
True.
She could have married one of those. For the money. Do it for the money.
But the whole idea was Kitty she saw her parents and their love, right? And, like, she wanted that. And I think it was the whole, like, I guess we can argue, like, in Bridgerton, the mom, she never wanted to remarry either because she had this epic love with the dad. And I just think it's the same situation. Of
But
course,
they weren't poor. They had no need for money. That's the thing. It's like
that is
because you
fair.
don't want to do the responsible thing, your eldest daughter now has to do the responsible thing, and like in doing so, she
That is
creates a
fair.
ruse that, in my opinion, I'm like, that could be very iffy. Like, you're using someone, and the fact that they're not there to get things off of them, and like there was money involved. Like,
That is
he
true.
bought her a house
Yeah.
unknowingly. Like,
I know.
that's kind of iffy, and it's like, well, the mom maybe could have remarried, or maybe she could have like tried and married off the eldest or something. I don't know. Something.
She is the eldest.
Well, yeah, exactly. She never tried to marry off Kitty, did she?
Well, because no one wanted her. That's why she was a wallflower. She was, like, past the marrying age, too, at 23, Marge.
She has like four
She had
daughters.
4 seasons, Marge. She had
No
4
one
seasons.
wanted
Four
her.
daughters.
We didn't see her first season, her second season. We don't know what it was like. Maybe the mom was pushing her off to men, and, like, the men were like, hell no. We don't know. Listeners, Marge has a look of judgment on her face right now.
Anyways. I'm just saying, the mom was weirdly absent.
I agree, but I think it was for the story, for their story to
But
progress.
that's weird, right? Like, that's not usually something that happens in historical romances where the mom's like, okay, go with him.
No, it
No
never
chaperone.
happens like that.
Or, like, she would send, like, I don't know, a governess or just someone
yeah,
of
like a
some
maid or
sort
something. Yeah.
of adult figure would be sent.
You're not, I mean, let's be real. She would never come back with, like, a reputation in order. It'd be in shambles. She just spent 2 weeks with an unmarried
But
man.
they said that she went somewhere else, though. That's the thing. She went to go visit an aunt or something. So no one knew besides her mother and
But didn't the mom, like, confess to, like, a friend or something?
to
towards
his
the end?
aunt, I think.
Oh, it was his aunt.
Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah. I mean, besides that, yes, that was a big question mark I had.
Okay, so we've had 2 of the similar books that we've read had like the men ended up being scarred because of the war, and then now 2 of them it's because of a fire in which they
Yes.
tried to save people and they ended up being burnt. I say that first of all, we cannot read another one of these.
No, we have to find another one that does not have a scarred hero.
We have to find something else, but I will say we should try and find a scarred heroine, because I feel like that would make a nice difference. But also I wonder, because like they were all sort of similar, but obviously the gap, like it's so unequal between men and women at this time that I'd be curious to see how they would like handle a woman being scarred, and like how like the repercussions of that on a woman, because obviously they were seen as objects, and so like a man could still have he still had his properties and his money and everything, but like for a woman, like you had to be married off. So like
That's true.
I wonder how that would be treated in the story, and I can't really think of anything. I mean, I know it exists. I know they're out there. We just
there
need
has
to
to be
find
books
them,
on
but
it, like about it.
yeah, but I think it could be interesting to contrast a woman that's scarred as opposed to a man that's scarred in this time period, for sure.
I agree. I don't know. We have to go searching. But I would be down for that.
All right. Are we ready to go into the monster of the story?
Sure. What do you think the monster of the story is?
I didn't have a monster for Kitty, but I think for Alexander, his monster is refusing to like live his life to the fullest. There was a quote that he said at the end where he tells her, he's like, I had been looking at you, me, us, through the lens of the impossibility, when I should have looked at what was possible. So I don't know. I think his monster is him just holding back from just living his life and letting her in.
I think there's a lot of things for him. I mean, I have a plenty of quotes. I feel like, well, first of all, one of them is, I think, loneliness. I do think he talks about feeling quite lonely. He says at one point, oh, I can't find it now, but he talks about how he's lonely and like he's always thought he enjoyed it, but also does he type of thing, like does he enjoy the loneliness? I mean, we've talked at length before about like how loneliness is like very comfortable sometimes and you don't realize how it's holding you back. So I definitely think there was some of that for him. There was also like a sort of dependence on medication for him. He talks about, let me just try to find that one. Yeah, he says, for some time, opium was my best friend.
Yeah.
Hashish was my lover. Lendenum was my brother, and we got together often in my despair. And then he says something like to her, like, with you, I want to be present, you know, because he was sort of, I guess, because of his pain, more so emotional, I think. Like, I obviously he was taking the drugs for the physical pain, but I do think it was more to do with his emotional pain of like trying to just escape into some like dream realm, you know, and not really deal with what was going on. And he actually tells her that at one point, like, you make me want to be present, you make me want to like live as opposed to just exist and dream and like be caught up in my own mind type of thing.
And like for that, he makes that decision to stop taking the drugs and like get off of it because of his sister Penny, because she begged him to like, you know, be a part of her life. But then, like you said, he only started living because of Kitty and like what they had.
And then there's another quote where he says, Alexander acknowledged then that this was the very reason he had waited almost 2 weeks after Dr. Grant's suggestion of self-ministration to tempt his cock to rise. Fear of failure. Alexander ached quite desperately to bring into existence the future he envisioned with Catherine. Catherine? Catherine. Catherine is another series.
Wrong series,
Traveling the world, making love with her, but most of all, the laughter, the sweet way she smiled, her bold vivacity for life that would sweep away the emptiness he had lived with for so long. So yeah, we talked about the fact that he couldn't quite, you know, masturbate, but
get it up.
He did wait quite a long time to do it, and I was wondering, I was like, okay, so your doctor told you should try it out, and then he doesn't, and I was like, that's interesting. So I loved how it came back because like, again, it plays into the whole, like, it's an emotional wound more so than physical, and he was scared that it would fail. And then it does fail, but it doesn't actually fail for the reason that he thinks it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, you know, is important. What did you think, Sev?
For me, I thought his monster had like two sides for me. So yeah, I agree. Like, loneliness was one that I also had, but like, you already talked about it. But for me, it was like his belief that people only felt pity when, you know, he's around. He lost Kitty because of that. He lost a lot of friends because of that, despite, I'm pretty sure, his friends reaching out. He even says himself that it was him that didn't reach back to his friends.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. And then we also experienced that with Penny and his cousin, who we didn't talk about. And they were living away from him, like, from a distance, despite living in the same house. They wanted to be a part of his life. They wanted him to be a part of their life. But he thought all they felt was pity and not compassion or love or empathy or whatever. He just didn't want their pity. And
I have a quote for that.
You do? Okay, share it.
Okay. So he says, or I think she says, I believe people look away because it is uncomfortable to gaze upon another's pain when it is bare for the world to see. How
Mm-hmm.
do they relate or offer words of compassion when they truly cannot understand your pain? It would seem pretentious to say the least, and they are aware of it, and thus
Mm-hmm.
become flummoxed,
Flummoxed?
flummoxed. I don't know.
I don't know either.
And perhaps act like fools. You are one of the most handsome men of my acquaintance.
Aww.
So she says that to him
Yeah.
because I think he thinks, like you said, that it's like, oh, I'm ugly or whatever. But the truth is, like, it is uncomfortable to look at someone else in pain and
Yeah.
not know what to do or how to express what you feel without exactly what you said, looking like you pity them, which is not the case.
No, and I think his cousin even talks about it when Alex wakes up in his room after, the incident, and Alexander tries to get out of the bed, and then his cousin goes quickly to go and catch him, and then like Alexander is like, stop, like, don't even try. And like his cousin was like, it's not because I pity you, it's because I love you. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's so heartbreaking because you see his family trying to reach out and try to be helpful and like try to be there for him, but he just feels pity, and like, not pity, he thinks that they feel pity. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. And like, so it goes hand in hand with what, like, another thing I picked up on is like his desire to want to do things by himself because he wants to try to get back
Mm-hmm.
to a sort of
But I don't necessarily think that
normal.
that's a monster. I feel like that's one
It,
of his. It's like both a strength and
yeah, that's what
something
I
that's
was gonna say
holding
that.
him back at times, because it's
Yeah,
like, let yourself be helped when you need it. Like, you need to be
exactly.
able to say, I need help right now, which like his pride does make it difficult for him to say that sometimes, but I do
Hmm.
think it's also a strength in some places where it's like, no, he can do it by
No, I
himself.
agree.
Yeah.
No, I agree. For him, I think closer to the beginning, it causes him to do things that necessarily, he wouldn't do if he had asked for help, or it caused him more pain because of his desire to, quote unquote, appear as he was before. It pushed him, into more pain,
Yeah.
and to basically start building himself back up from the bottom again. Um, so I think it goes hand in hand with like everyone, like him thinking everyone feels pity for him, um, with him wanting to do things by himself, everything by himself. And I think he needed to realize, which I think later on he does after that discussion with his cousin and his sister, um, that people do want to be there for him, and he has a family and he has support.
Hmm. I think one of my favorite lines of the book, or like one of my favorite moments, is when they actually have sex for the first time. He says, "Only my doctors have seen me." He leaned in and placed his forehead against hers. "I want you to." And then she says, "My darling, thank you for trusting me." And I just
Aww.
love that so much. Like, thank you for
Mm-hmm.
trusting me and showing me something that I don't think he's afraid of it. I just think, like, in a way, because of his emotional blockage, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, I get how like that has become something that like not worries him, but like, I don't know how to explain it, but I think it was just like really beautiful of him to
Yeah.
say, like, this has sort of become like a medical thing. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's kind of what he's saying. Like, I'm being looked at by my doctor like constantly, and no one else has seen it
Yeah.
since, but I want you to, and I want this to
Mm-hmm.
become something else. I want my body to go back to being something that's not just something for doctors to look at, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And for her to say, like, thank you for trusting me, because yeah, you know, like, it does take trust, and it's like a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think they were really sweet, and like, I don't know, I
They
just
were.
loved them.
Yeah.
I loved them. Did any of you have a monster for Kitty? I felt like she was harder to find a monster for. Like, if I'm being picky or like nitpicky, I like, it's not even a monster, but it was something I think we should highlight. Was her selflessness. It's not like, it's not a monster at all. It's, she only got into this whole fake engagement thing because she wanted to ensure a good future for her sisters. So she obviously fakes this engagement. But like she pushes her own happiness aside for her family, full well knowing that she'll be ruined when this engagement ends, and like when it becomes known to society that, you know, she's not engaged anymore. She basically is ruined. She would be ruined. And she doesn't even let herself really dream. And she doesn't start, I guess, expressing what her dreams are until Alexander pushes her to like say, "What do you dream of?" When we don't really know about it until she says that she wants to travel.
I always feel weird when the female characters don't really have a monster, because I do feel like everyone should.
Yeah.
So like when that sort of thing is like not that obvious in the book, I'm like, maybe she was made to be a little bit too perfect, and maybe that's why, I don't know about you guys, but I never identified with her in any way.
Okay. I don't know if I identified with her. I more so understood her with like wanting to ensure everyone around her was happy.
When you have a character like Alexander, you have to have someone that's just as, she's kind of just there. Like, it's just, what does she have going on? You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
she did have, I mean, we talked about her mom and the fact that like her mom should have been the one to you know, be responsible for this family. So like that in a way is like, you know, it shouldn't have to be her. So like I'm not saying like she's, you know, not doing shit and just sitting on her ass, not doing anything, but I kind of like, I always feel weird when they don't really have a monster that's like clear.
I don't know. I feel like her character, I don't think she was perfect, but I also don't think she had a monster that was stopping her from her happiness. I think I love that as a woman, she knew her self-worth, like I said before, and she knew when to get out, when to get out. And I love that. And I love seeing that. And I think as females, I think other readers and other females should be able to, you know, read that and, you know, acknowledge her strength. And I think that's something that a lot of women in our world struggle with, like knowing when to get out or knowing when to, you know, say enough is enough. I don't know. And I like that she still took the reins in the end. Like she knew that, you know, she wasn't done with Alexander and she wanted to be with him. So she took the reins. And I don't know. I thought she wasn't a perfect character, but I really can't find her monster. But it didn't stop me from enjoying her character and understanding her and empathizing with her.
This is making me almost wish her reputation had been ruined, because then I feel like it would have made for like some interesting angst and like interesting conflict of like, well, what the hell do I do now type of thing. Like, I'm ruined, I'm back in London, he thinks I'm boring.
But then I think that's just, like you said, it would be unnecessary, not unnecessary angst. You didn't say that. You said it would be angst. But I think in my head, it would be unnecessary. Because, like, then would she struggle with the idea of, oh, is he only marrying me because my reputation is ruined?
Okay, but it could also like make for an interesting moment where she's like, my reputation is ruined, fine, but I still consider myself you know, worthy.
True.
I don't know. Like I was just I guess what I'm trying to say is like I was looking for some sort of conflict on her end, cuz he had his and she had hers with him, but then like just her, besides the whole like, oh, I gotta marry off my sisters, which happened within the first 3 chapters or whatnot. Like her sisters were set just because of the fake engagement. So it's like, well, what's going forward, what do you have going on your end that is making me feel for you, that makes me want you to have your happiness, you know?
I think this author really focused on Alexander as a character and his journey. And like you said, I think Kitty was just like not an accessory. I hate saying that, but it wasn't her journey to go on. It was his. It was his journey that we read about.
And she went with him, if that makes sense. Like she was on this journey with him.
Yes.
I get that. I'm just a little picky. I just love the drama, all right?
It still had drama. I was still very much enthralled. I was still very much, tearing up at one point, laughing in the other moment. I don't know. I enjoyed it overall, as I already said.
I just had a thought. Is that why she went to go learn like all that sexual stuff, was because he called her boring?
No, I think she just didn't know how to seduce a man at all because, like, when would she ever had exposure to that?
Can I admit something? In the very beginning of the book, I was like, all right, so is this going to be a strap-on kind of book? I was fully expecting them to make, like, an appearance.
Well, yeah, the dildo she was holding.
Well, I mean, yes, but I meant, like, a full-on strap-on for him.
No, I really thought the dildo was going to come into play.
Yeah. Well,
because, they talked about it, and she didn't know what she was holding, and he knew what she was holding, and...
Yeah, that was weird. It was just mentioned, and I was like, is she holding a literal, actual dildo? And then, but then that never flourished into anything, so...
Yeah, damn, I actually think about that now, and now I wanted a scene with that.
I don't know, maybe Homegirl just went back to London and had fun. I don't know, because she didn't know what it was, so...
Yeah.
Anywho.
What did you think, S? Do you think she went to learn more? Because she thought she believed that she was boring?
Well, that just, I don't know, just the explanation that Marge was saying, and she brought up, like, her being boring. That just popped into my head. Like, did she go learn all those sexual things?
So that she won't be boring? Oh, my God. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
that's
like
what she thought.
I don't know, that just popped into my head right now.
Because that just paints the whole thing in, like, a different light, I feel like. I didn't see it that way, but like,
she clearly said she only went because she didn't know how to seduce a man. But I'm pretty sure Miss Princess of Prussia
or whatever
taught her things that, I
mean, I thought she went there because she wanted to know how to pleasure a man, especially one who believes himself to be impotent.
Yeah.
But with what S is saying, there's also a possibility that she went because she thought she was boring and she wanted to not be boring anymore, which is like, ooh, yikes.
I mean...
Oh, man.
I mean, if a guy were to tell you, like, oh, you're boring, like, you bore me already, like, wouldn't that kind of, like, plant a seed in your head, like, fuck, I gotta do something to not be boring.
Gotta go see a bunch of prostitutes just to learn.
No, that's something that I think should have been addressed. Because being called boring would hurt.
Yeah, fuck you.
You're right. Listen, that's what he should have said when he put his ass in the goddamn carriage, drove himself to London, and told her, you are not boring. That's what he should have said. Did he? No.
I mean,
No,
I think
he didn't.
in other words, he did say that she wasn't.
In what words, Seth? In what words?
That's my thing. I'm
words?
like, it was said, but I can't pick out the sentence, which I think is not good.
You should remember that. I feel like if we all remember the line where he says she's boring as fuck, we should all remember the line where he says, never mind.
I agree.
So.
I agree.
Anyway, I have a question.
Yes, let's hear it.
So, now that we've read 4 books that are more or less sort of similar, if you had to be dropped into the plot of any of those books and you become the heroine of it, which would you choose out of the 4?
Oh.
Well, it's 3 for me, right? Because I didn't read.
Oh, yeah, you didn't read Beast of Bezek.
So we have The Beast of Bezek, just as a reminder, The Beast of Bezek by Amalie Howard. We have The Black Beast of Belleterre by Mary Jo Putney. We have The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare, and we have this one, My Darling Duke by Stacy Reid. Which would you choose? Would you choose Thane? Would you choose, what were the other names? Would you choose Ash? Is that his name?
Yes, Ash Falconer. I don't know what his real name was.
Who's Ash?
James. I think his name was
Ash
James.
was the Duchess, the day of the Duchess.
The Duchess Deal.
Duchess Deal.
I gotta go back to my notes.
I think his name was James from the Black.
James, yes, James was his name.
Or this guy, Alexander. If I remember correctly, I don't think anyone is gonna pick the Black Beast of Belleterre because we all said that life seemed boring.
Yes, yeah, that wasn't even a contender for me. I enjoyed the story, like I said, but
Yeah.
the life would be boring.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, it's between Ash and Alexander, and I have to make my decision because I felt like both were very witty and funny, and I feel like we would have good conversations.
I'm surprised Thane is like so easily discarded for you, because you loved Thane more than I did.
I loved Thane, I know, but it's just, I don't know.
Oh, can I just mention that no asses or lips were particularly mentioned in this book? I'm just saying.
I
were?
Object.
Oh, okay.
In this book, I wanted to make sure I paid attention. They
Okay.
did mention his lips. His ass was not mentioned. His lips were. His lips were mentioned. I remember her saying that they were nice looking, but he had a scar, it went into his lips.
For our listeners that do not understand what we're talking about, we just noticed a pattern in these sort of books with, heavily scarred heroes where, they're heavily scarred, but somehow they have the nicest butt you could possibly think of, or the nicest lips. And they're always mentioned. And so I wasn't paying attention this time around, so I figured it wasn't mentioned, but apparently the lips were mentioned. No butts, though.
Mm-hmm. No butts, though.
So, all right.
All right, as you go.
Hey, you didn't choose anyone.
Was I supposed to go first? I was just thinking aloud.
All right.
Go, Seth. Go. Go.
Marge, you asked the question.
I'm not
your
even
answer?
thinking. I'm not even thinking. And you have to explain why, huh? This is not just you have to have reasons why you pick.
Damn, okay, let me do some research.
God damn it. I don't know, Marge.
But now I reread my review for Beast of Bezek.
You really loved that book.
I did. Do I have to choose, or can I just fake faint and be like, bring my smelling salts?
You can't. Okay, I can give you my answer.
All right.
I will probably regret it. I feel like purely, if we're talking like purely physically, I think I would say Thane.
Why? Because he has a nice ass
to
and
be
lips?
the hottest of all of them, but I think I'm gonna go with Ash because, first of all, he was the most he had a good stamina. And he liked to get it going. And also, if I'm to become the heroine, then what was her name? Was it Emma? No.
Emma.
Was it Emma? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was a dressmaker, and growing up, I wanted to make dresses. So I'm like, that makes the most sense to me because I'd be doing something I always wanted to do, and like Ash is like a pretty good choice. So that's if I could get Thane but be Emma, that'd be like the perfect scenario for me. But also, I feel like Emma has a circle of friends, whereas what was her name? The girl from Beast of Bezek, she didn't have friends really, from what I can remember anyway. She had her sister. So, that's my choice. I'd be dropped into the Duchess deal.
All right. I think I have my answer as well.
Okay.
My answer would be Alexander.
Okay.
That being said, I mean, I feel like I would struggle in some situations, but this man has a gigantic library, and we all know I love to read. And,
The library is always a thing for you. I can't get over it.
I just realized that as I said it. The libraries, if a man tells me they have a library, I'm there.
They all have massive libraries, though.
I know, but like
Thane had a massive library. The Falconer had a massive library. They all
I know, but this one I feel like it was highlighted. And he also has like a collection of like interesting like objects, and like he loves to travel. And one of my big things is I want to travel. And so having a travel buddy who's equally as passionate about traveling would be amazing, for one. And, we would be like going crazy about the same things. Like, he went to Egypt. I would love to go to Egypt. I would just love to travel. And yeah, just having that travel buddy with you would be amazing. And plus, he's hot. And, it sucks, he can't, all the time. But I mean, realistically speaking, if we're traveling, we won't really have the time or like the energy. Traveling is a very tiring thing. That being said, she also had a great.
What?
Shut up! I'm not rambling. She had a great set of friends.
Is a very tiring.
She had a great set of friends as well. So like, I wouldn't be lacking in the friendship department as well. Like, they seem very supportive. So that's why I decided, to be dropped into my Darling Duke world. Yeah, for the traveling and the books.
I just love how I'm like, so it'd be the Duchess deal because Ash fucks a lot. Meanwhile, Seth is like, the library and the traveling. But also, I just need to add that also another reason why I'd be picking Ash is because he lives in London. I would not want to be living away in some, like...
See, I've always wanted to go to Scotland.
I would want to be where the fun is at, you know?
Yeah.
And then come home to my hubby and just have sex all over the
place.
But okay.
The thing with Alexander is he won't like say no. I think he would still go to balls and things like that if that's what you wanted. He was still gonna go with Penny. That's so far
away. He lives in Scotland. That's like 2 weeks away.
Not really. It's a few days away.
Oh, Ash lives in the city. That's where I want to be. I'm not.
And
I
just feel
girl.
like Alexander would be like, he's funny and like.
They're all funny, though.
True.
They all
Ash was pretty
humor.
funny.
They are.
All right, S, you've had enough thinking time.
They all blend in together, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, okay, the Falconer was the bald one that looked like Abraham Lincoln, so I feel like I can scratch that one.
So, is he the one that went to go scare her
No, that was Ash.
Okay, then Ash. Because he's the one that defends her, right? Defends the dad?
Yeah.
I mean, defends her from the dad.
Makes the dad
scares him?
think he's the devil.
He's a ghost? Yeah, him.
All right.
And he accepted her without a toe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, S and I are fighting over a husband, apparently.
Well, I'm going to be with Alexander on a beach, so...
Can't believe you didn't pick Thane. That really, like, that's a plot twist to me.
Really? Okay. I
feel
Thane.
like he's like at a disadvantage because it's been so long compared to the others. I think
that could be it as well. But I also feel like we wouldn't really mesh well in terms of like our hobbies. I love him as a character, and I want to
throw teacups at a wall all day long.
This man collects like ancient
play golf with teacups.
Actually, no, he doesn't. That was his dad's collection. But like, what did he do? Like, what was his hobbies? I'm trying to remember, and like none of them stood out.
He took a lot of baths and threw teacups and was just really angry most of the time.
Yeah, whereas like I felt like Alexander was a very fleshed out character. We knew his likes, we knew his dislikes, we knew his passions.
I would want to dress up and go terrorize the town with Ash.
That would be great.
We are the monsters of Mayfair.
Yes. All right.
Well, that was my question. I'm glad
that was a great
we
question.
all figured out an answer. Even though us and I are apparently fighting over a husband now, which... When are we not?
I won't fight you, Marge. I won't fight you. It's fine.
All right, are we done? Any last thoughts? No? All right. Well, thanks for joining us today for another episode of Romancing the Monsters. This one was on My Darling Duke by Stacy Reid. If you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at the RTM Pod, as well as on Instagram at Romancing the Monsters Podcast. You can also email us if you want to at romancingthemonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and you can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at Foes and Lovers.
And you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at ButThisBook.
And you can find me, Seth, on both Instagram and Twitter at Pros with Woes. And you can also find Romancing the Monsters on TikTok at Romancing the Monsters Pod. We'll be having some fun things on there.
Yeah. And that's it. We hope you'll join us next week.
Bye!